If you don't get the building science correctly, for instance, if you put too big of an HVAC system into your house, well, that's going to create a problem of mold and mildew in your house. You can actually create an environment that becomes toxic, which, if your builder doesn't understand the building science, and if the architect doesn't understand the building science, which unfortunately most don't, you could have a serious problem. So they could legally build you a house that meets building code, but they have built it incorrectly.
Welcome back to the Falls Homefront, where Wichita Falls leads in North Texas real estate, business, and life. I'm Tim Lockhart, and today we're talking about something that many people dream about: building a custom home. But before you choose a floor plan or pick out finishes, there are some important decisions that can impact your home's comfort, durability, efficiency, and long-term value. Joining me today is Matt Mitchell, the founder of James Andrews Custom Homes. Matt has been building super high-performance custom homes since 2002 and is recognized as a master builder, a SIP builder, and green builder. He's also a past president of the Dallas Builders Association and teaches building science to builders and industry professionals across Texas. Matt, welcome to the Falls Homefront.
Thank you. It's great to be here. I get up to the Wichita Falls area from time to time. It's a cool area. Love to go hunting up there.
Yeah, that's great. There are a lot of good things to do around here, so it's good to have you up here. Yeah, so let's start with your story. What first inspired you to focus on becoming a home builder and focusing on high performance custom homes over 20 years ago?
Well, I originally got into construction in college when I was just doing summer jobs. I would work kind of as a gopher on job sites for multifamily projects. And I always thought that was kind of interesting. And after college, I didn't go the construction route. I ended up going through a ministry called Young Life, worked with teenage kids, and did that for 10 years, including volunteer time, over 10 years. And that was awesome and loved that. But time came to get out of that. And through one of my volunteer leaders, I got into home building. And that was in 2002. And it was a fascinating time to be in construction because there were so many changes going on. And a lot of it had to do with building science, which never previously had really been taken seriously in the industry. It was always you just built houses and you did it the same way, and people tended to build houses the way my daddy built them, and that kind of mentality. And so getting into the industry at that time was fascinating because building codes change every 3 years. They're updated every 3 years. So every 3 years, you need to take into account what are the changes and what's going on. And every 3 years, building science becomes more and more important to construction. And it's very important now. And if you don't know and up to date on building science and how that applies to construction, you can be in a lot of trouble in a hurry.
Oh, wow. Yeah, that's really interesting. And so when somebody comes to you and they say that they want to build their dream home, what do you think is often overlooked?
When people have in mind typically their dream home, it's all about aesthetics. And they don't take into account how is the building, how is the home going to perform? And performance is very important. And just in the last couple of years, at least a little south from you guys, I don't think Wichita Falls is on the Texas grid, but for the rest of Texas, it's on the Texas grid. Cost of energy has gone up by 40%. And it's about to go up again, is at least that's what ERCOT is telling us. And that's driven from all these data centers coming online. So, how a building performs, how energy efficient is incredibly important. Therefore, also, how healthy is it to live in a house these days that's newly constructed? So, these are very important factors. But then we tend to also forget how strong is the house? How resilient? Wichita Falls, close to the Red River, all the Red River counties gets more severe weather than we do in Dallas, and we get severe weather down here. But as you get closer and closer to Oklahoma City, it becomes more and more severe the further north you go. So building a house that's incredibly strong is very important as well. So it's often overlooked because people, they want to spend more money on countertops or cabinets or flooring, and they don't think about what type of insulation. Well, if you do really great insulation, that's going to be putting money back in your pocket every month forever. So it's something to be taken into account.
Yeah, it's good for people to think about. So, something that you mentioned is building science. So, for someone who's never heard of that term before, what exactly does that mean?
It's actually a very broad spectrum, and building science comes into play as to how energy efficient your house is. The more energy efficient your house is, the smaller your HVAC system can be, your air conditioning and heating. For a modern house, really all houses that are built today should be considered high performance houses in that they're very energy efficient, certainly a lot more energy efficient than they were 20, 25 years ago. And we've gotten to the point where we've pushed the energy efficiency about as far as we're going to push it. So now we're looking at mechanical systems like your air conditioning unit, your water heating units, things like that. Building science has a whole lot to say about those things. And if you don't get the building science correctly, for instance, if you put too big of an HVAC system into your house, well, that's going to create a problem of mold and mildew in your house. You can actually create an environment that becomes toxic, which if your builder doesn't understand the building science, and if the architect doesn't understand the building science, which unfortunately most don't, you could have a serious problem. So they could legally build you a house that meets building code, but they have built it incorrectly, which 5 years down the road could become a bit of a toxic mess. So the building science is very important to incorporate properly. So your builder really needs to understand, and it's helpful if the architect as well really understands things like Newton's second law of thermodynamics and how that applies to the exterior walls and the roof. Roof is something that's often overlooked. It's often forgotten because we tend to focus more on a wall. But the roof is more important energy wise and also more important from a strength perspective. If you need to spend more money on your roof than your exterior walls, but both obviously are very important.
Yeah, it's really interesting. So what are some of the biggest misconceptions that people have about how new homes are actually built today?
That things can be plug and play. Like the house was designed with a certain type of window, therefore we can just swap those windows out with a different type of window, and then that's okay. Or all insulation is the same, or all construction is the same. It's not. Different types of construction have a lot to do with how well a house performs. Even the way your house is oriented on your piece of land, by twisting it, turning it 10%, 15%, 20% can mean huge energy savings. If you have a whole bunch of windows in glass that are south facing or west facing, that can have a huge amount to say about how energy efficient your house is and can save you a whole lot of money. And in the design process, you can take those things into account. Like if I'm sitting in my personal house, I don't have any windows that are facing south because that's where the sun is. It bakes and cooks all that stuff. The walls are very energy efficient, but the windows are probably 4 times less efficient than a wall is, depending upon what type of material you're using. So all these little details add up, but a lot of these details don't cost any amount of money on the front end to get correct. So if you just use the building science to your advantage, you can build something that's very energy efficient and it may not cost any more money.
Oh, that's great. Yeah, so kind of along those lines, we've heard that phrase that they don't build them like they used to. Is that actually true, and is that a good thing or a bad thing?
Uh, well, the type of construction that we do is very different today. I would suggest, thank God we don't build houses the way we used to. Our houses are considerably stronger. They are considerably more energy efficient. And that is absolutely critical in this day and age. 40 years ago, 30 years ago, 20 years ago, 100 years ago, the cost of energy was a whole lot cheaper. Before the 1950s, nobody had air conditioning, so they didn't worry about stuff like that. So how they built a house and how they incorporated trying to cool it down in the summer and things like that are stuff that really doesn't matter much to us today. Now, we're worried about the incredible heat we have in the summer and just how cold it gets in the winter, and just allergens are so bad, and insects, and trying to keep things clean and dust coming in. Houses used to be very leaky by design. They aren't anymore. They're now very tight, and they should be tight. And they should be very tight. The tighter you can get them, the better.
Right. And as the homes get tighter, the indoor air quality is affected.
Exactly. And it makes a huge difference. And one of the problems is an HVAC company or a builder or whoever, they may try and put an HVAC system in just like they did when it was a house that was built like a house from 1975. The old adage of 1 ton of air conditioning for every 500 square feet. That's crazy. That's completely unnecessary. When I build houses, I could do 1 ton of air conditioning for about 1,200 or 1,400 square feet. My personal house has 1 ton of air conditioning for every 1,420 square feet. So it doesn't have to run a whole lot. It's very energy efficient. So it just is a very small system for the size of house I need, and it works great.
Right. Yeah. And the HVAC system has become much more important because of needing the air changes because the houses are so tight. And so that's really important too.
Correct. Yeah. What happens is if you put a system that's too big into a new house, people think, oh, well, that's so great because it's going to turn on and it's going to cool my house down really quickly, or it will heat it up really quickly. And it will. But that creates a problem. The system will turn on and run for a short period of time and then shut back off. And that's called short cycling. And what happens is any piece of appliance or equipment that you're constantly turning on and off, it shortens the lifespan of it. There's a lot of energy required on an HVAC system to turn on. And it's like sitting in a car at a red light. And when the light turns green, you smash the accelerator as hard as you possibly can. and get up to speed. And then when you get to another red light, you smash on the brakes as hard as you can. Well, you can do that and it'll work, but your car won't last as long. It's just really hard on the equipment. So now we have variable speed units that turn on and slowly ramp up. So we don't need that massive burst of energy on the front end. And that's a huge energy savings. And we keep the HVAC system on longer with a smaller system. That way, as long as it's cooling, it's dehumidifying in your house. And as long as you can keep the humidity down in your house, it won't allow it to grow mold or things like that. And so your indoor air quality will be much better and you won't wind up with a toxic house.
Yeah, that's really important. Yeah, thanks for explaining that. So, a slightly different topic. How do you help clients to determine whether they should remodel an existing home or start fresh with a custom build?
I start with what are their end goals? How long do they plan on being in the house? Typically, if you're remodeling the entire house, the cost to remodel is about twice as expensive as new construction is. One of the main drivers of that is when you're doing demolition in a house you're remodeling, you really have to be careful with it. You can't just go in there and tear down the walls really quickly or things like that. You've got to take into account where are the load-bearing walls and what can I do to that and how do I strengthen it. And in a remodel, you have no idea what you're dealing with until you crack that house open. You don't know what mistakes were made. I've remodeled houses that had been added on to and remodeled 3 or 4 times. And the stuff that you find that someone may have done 40 years ago, it can be crazy. But you got to fix all that stuff. But you don't know that you have to fix it until you get into it. So there's lots of surprises. As opposed to new construction, everything's a clean slate. So people can get in there and do what they need to do. And it's a much easier and straightforward process, typically with fewer surprises.
Yeah, that's true. There can always be surprises and hidden costs in any project, especially renovation of older homes.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's a big deal. And there can be surprises in new construction. If you're building a custom home, you're building something that's never been built before. And there can be a couple of wrinkles here and there. And that's okay. They're typically pretty easy to iron out. But, surprises happen. But in remodeling, it tends to be really big surprises and really big, shocking bills to fix whatever that needs to be fixed.
Right, right. Yeah, so when people are building a new home or talking to builders, I'd like to a little bit about what makes your homes different. And so what is a super high performance home and how might that differ from how other builders are currently building homes?
Yeah. A super high performance home not only takes into account the energy efficiency, but it also takes into account the strength. Obviously, up in Wichita Falls, like Dallas, we get big, huge storms. It just happens. Sometimes it's tornadic in nature, and you'd be amazed just how much we can handle as far as storm load and wind load with a properly built, very strong house. And one of the materials that I use, it's nothing new, show it to you a little bit. It's called a structural insulated panel. So I use this for my exterior walls and my roof. It's 2 to 5 times stronger than a stick-built house, but it's also about 65, 70% more energy efficient. So they're very tight, they're very strong, and they make the entire construction process faster and easier to put it together correctly. Modern construction has become very complex. particularly stick construction, is a very complex process, and it's very difficult for people, trades out in the field, to put them together correctly. And it takes a whole lot of headaches and things like that out of the system to use something like a structural insulated panel. It's nothing new. It's been around for almost 100 years. First ones were used by the military to make walk-in refrigerators out in the field, and they wanted to be able to break them down and move them to another spot and put them back together. And the famous architect Frank Lloyd Wright found out about him, and he started building commercial and housing developments out of them. And the thing that he loved about them was that they were so strong. He could get big, huge, long spans out of them, and which is one of the wonderful benefits out of them. And one of his students, Alden Dow from Dow Chemical Company, he took them into the residential market in a really broad range. And so, like I said, it has a very long track record. It's been used in every climate zone on the planet, in earthquake zones, in hurricanes, tornadoes, and they just perform. They perform great. And like I said, they're easier to put together than they are stick construction. So you tend to get fewer callbacks and fewer mistakes.
That's very interesting. I didn't know that he had used the panels also. I was actually thinking that it was more of a newer concept.
They were probably a little bit different when he was first started using them in the 30s. Alden Dow in the 50s probably was the one that started to incorporate the foam core into them. But what I love about it, amongst the things I love about it, it's a very simple product. It doesn't have moving parts. It's, put together easy, and it's easy to put together, and it's easy to figure out. It's a lot like putting Legos together out on a job site, because all the windows, all the doors, all the roof pitches, that's all been cut out in a factory and sent out to you on the job site, and everything's just tilt up into place. And then the interior walls are just traditionally stick framed, just like any other house. So that's all pretty easy, but you just don't have as many loads on the interior walls, and you don't need insulation on the interior walls. So stick framing works in that situation really well.
Right. Right. So how's that type of construction, how's that affect the cost and the time to build?
If you were to compare it to a properly built stick house, it's about the same price. If one was a little more expensive than the other, then I would suggest the SIP side would be a little bit more expensive. But if you're comparing it to a properly built house, it's about the same price.
Yeah. How about the time of construction? Does it take about the same time, or does it take less
It's a little
time on
bit
site?
faster. Yeah. Well, the time to frame it will be a little bit faster. All the other trades, it's about the same. You get some time savings here and there, which is nice, but they don't amount to a huge amount, but it is a little bit faster. Because the panels are already cut out in a factory, there's a lot less waste, because you just don't, for all the exterior walls and roof, we don't need to cut anything. So you're getting about 5 steps all at once. So it's nice to be able to get all that and incorporate it.
Yeah, that sounds good. Yeah. So how about something that doesn't get a lot of attention from homeowners, which is permits and inspections? So how does skipping those hurt homeowners?
Oh, it's a big area. I highly recommend always getting inspections. Unfortunately, there are some builders out there that will whisper into a client's ear, "Ooh, you don't need to do this, and you can save a little bit of money." And yeah, you're right. You can save a little bit of money. It's not a huge amount, but just to have a third party to be able to come on the job site and just look over things and make sure things are being done properly. Mistakes are made. Humans are not perfect. There is no such thing as a perfect material. There is no such thing as a perfect design. There is no such thing as a perfect install. So to have somebody who has no dog in the hunt to be able to come in and just look over the electrician's shoulder and make sure it was done right, or the HVAC system, or the framing. Anybody can have a bad day. The builder might legitimately have the best electrician on the planet working on your house. And let's just say they do, but say that he is the best electrician of all time. Anybody can have a bad day. Maybe the day before, the doctor just told the electrician he has cancer, or maybe his spouse, handed them divorce papers or something like that. And they're just distracted. They've got nothing else going on and they miss something. Life happens. So to have somebody come in and just look over the shoulder, and, hey, you know what? I think you missed this over here. Not a big deal. Electrician can come back, fix it. No big deal. It's easy to fix it at that point. It's really expensive to fix mistakes after the homeowner's already moved in. So it's just not worth it. Even if you were building out in the county where there's no city jurisdiction to do inspections, you can still hire a third-party inspector to come out and look at things and just make sure before they pour concrete, the foundation was correctly done. Have the engineer who designed it come out and verify that all the cables are in the right place, the steel is the right size. Because if you don't get that right and they pour the concrete, it may be 5 years, 10 years down the road before massive structural problems rear their ugly head. And what are you going to do?
Right. Yeah, that's true. And so if somebody is listening and they plan to build within the next year or two, what is the very first thing that they should do?
I would recommend to find a builder first. You can find an architect first, and that's fine. But have a builder in very early in the process. Architects tend to know very little specifically about the construction process and cost. So things can get a little bit crazy in the design process. People get excited. Oh, let's just add a little more square footage. Oh, let's add more windows. Oh, let's add this and this. All that stuff comes at a big price. And to have a builder involved that can, look at things, early in the process and say, that's a great idea, but it's really expensive. You may want to rethink that. Or, you can afford that. The builder is going to be able to manage the budget better than an architect can, because the builder is in it day in and day out, whereas the architect really isn't in on the cost side very much. They know a little bit about it, but they're just not in it that often. So the builder can kind of be the voice of reason sometimes and kind of rein things back in. So, everything is a commodity all on the job site. Everything, the price of everything is constantly going up and down. So builder being in the middle of that all the time just tends to know a little bit that, hey, the cost of copper has gone through the roof because, the mines in Chile have been shut down because of an earthquake. It happens. So all of a sudden, cost of wiring starts going through the roof. The builder can say, hey, be aware of this. This is something that can happen.
Yeah, so that's good advice. What excites you most about the future?
Let me add one more thing too. As it relates to realtors, getting a great realtor involved can be a huge amount of help as well. When they're helping you find a lot, often they know, what's going on in the neighborhood. They know what's going on in the country around it. And they can bring some wisdom into, I know this is a really great looking property, but there's a floodplain really close to this. And let's be aware of, sort of things like that. Realtors have walked hundreds, thousands of houses. And if they walk into an area that, gosh, for whatever reason, this neighborhood just all has a lot of foundation problems, let's be aware of that before, we go, we'll need to take into account engineering on this and really get geotechnical reports done so we know what's going on with this soil. So realtors can be a great deal of help on the front end as well.
Hmm. Yeah, that's a good point as well. Thank you for that. So what excites you most about the future of the residential construction industry?
Well, it's always changing. There's always new products. Nobody knows it all. Everybody has to be in a constant state of learning. I teach classes, but I also take classes. I'm taking a class tomorrow on microgrids. Fascinating subject that I don't know much of anything about. If you ever run across the builder or the architect who thinks they know it all, run from them. They don't. Nobody does. If I was to stack all the code books, the International Builders Code, the International Residential Code, the International Energy Conservation Code, the Mechanical Code, the Plumbing Code. I mean, literally, it's a giant stack like this, dense with information and things that have to be done properly. Nobody knows it all, and it's impossible. So we're in a constant state of learning. So you need to find a builder that's constantly trying to learn. Are they taking classes? Are they learning things? What's their background? Because it's all very important. And as the future comes, like I said, every 3 years, the building code changes. All of those codes change. The electrical code changes every 2 years. So we're constantly learning. But the new materials that are coming into place are fascinating. The solar stuff is fascinating stuff, and it just constantly gets better and better year in, year out. So the new stuff coming in, like, well, it's nothing new, heat pumps, but where we are with heat pumps and then the next generation of heat pumps that just make everything much more efficient and that work better is fascinating stuff. So the technology side of things is pretty amazing and it updates very quickly. Anything you can dream of to put in a house, they pretty well can do, or they can figure out a way as far as home automation goes to make it happen. And it's amazing stuff.
That's great. Matt, thanks so much for being a guest here today on the show. The expertise that you've shared with us has been really great. Building a custom home is one of the biggest investments that many people will ever make. And so this information has been really helpful. If anyone listening is wanting to learn more about James Andrews Custom Homes or to connect with you directly, what's the best way to reach you?
Probably the best way is to just call me directly. My phone number is 214-282-3723. And I'm sure you could contact Tim and get that from him and find me. My company is called James Andrews Custom Homes. And I have a website, and you can find my phone number on that as well. You can call, you can text, or just look up my name, Custom Home Builder, Matt Mitchell. I'm probably going to pop up in Google somewhere. So happy to talk with people. I love just giving people advice, and I love building houses for people. It's a fascinating process, and there's something about taking something that's in somebody's head and getting it down on paper and then building something three-dimensional and tangible with that is an absolutely amazing process.
Yes, that's amazing, Matt. Thank you for that. And for those who are listening, if you found this episode helpful, please share it with someone who may be planning to build or remodel or simply wants to become a more informed homeowner. Thanks for tuning in to the Falls Home Front, where we bring you the people, ideas, and expertise helping North Texas make smarter real estate decisions. And we'll see you on the next one.
Cool. Thank you, Tim. It was a blast. Enjoyed it.
Appreciate you tuning in. Want more insider tips on buying, selling, and investing in Wichita Falls and North Texas? Subscribe now and keep watching. Your next move starts here.